The game is called Nerd Pledge. Nerd Pledge. It's the game of nerds, the game of pledges, the game we play with the people on our Patreon page. Here's the deal. 2 shows a week. They need to get funded, and people help us fund them. Bless their hearts. And they send us contributions that are not normal round amounts of currency. They're very specific amounts, specific numbers that relate to cricket in some way. For instance, this week, the Reverend Dylan Nichols from the mighty Quackers Cricket Club in Melbourne has sent through $4.35, which means 435 is our Nerd Pledge number, and we have to figure out the significance of 435.
Yes, 435 from the Reverend. The clue, okay, it applies to a follower of Moses. He fell into a river. He rose to miss a milky vessel. He fell too short in later capturing the vessel. This is this is a good one, Jeff.
Now this was sent in poetry form. It was sent in each snippet on an individual line. It was a stanza of sorts, and it came in a couple of months ago. And I read the clue, and I was like, "What the hell is he on about?" Like, what? I was like, how am I supposed to figure this out? This is absurd. And I had it in the spreadsheet, and I looked at it a couple of times over the last couple of months when I was adding things to the spreadsheet, and still no idea. And then just this week when I came to pop it in our notes for the show, I thought, hang on a minute. Milky vessel, Pura Cup. Aha! It's about someone who won the Pura Cup. And then it all started to fall into place. Jonathan Moss still is a Jewish cricketer, a follower of Moses. So much so that he went to represent Australia in Israel at the Maccabiah Games in 1997 when he was a young lad. And he was walking across a pedestrian bridge over a river in Tel Aviv that collapsed and threw him into the Yankon River. So thus, a follower of Moses who fell into a river. He rose to miss a milky vessel because he debuted for Victoria in 2000-2001. They made the finals. He got out for a duck, and they lost the final in that season. But in 2003, he was playing as well when the Vicks made 710 and won the Milky Vessel, the Pura Cup, for the first time. He made 98. As per the clue, he fell too short. He made 98, which took him beyond 900 runs for the season, along with 19 wickets. He was an all-rounder, seam bowling all-rounder, who did some great work for Victoria in the middle order over a number of years.
Yeah, and his career corresponds with, I suppose, my peak Sheffield Shield fandom. So I remember being so invested in that 2000-2001 Shield final that I took a day off school to watch the first day when Victoria was skittled for not many. They made a great comeback in that match, actually, with the ball, and there was the Klinger-Stuart Law affair where did the catch carry, did it not, and all the rest of it. But that was their second Shield final in a row, and Queensland won both of them. But yeah, he in that 03-04, that was their first win since 1990-91. I remember it was the year when it would have been the year the Olympic stand was out of commission when it was being rebuilt. So everybody was gathered in the southern stand, and they were giving out milk by the gallon. And I was in my early second year of university, and I went along and I drank a shitload of milk. I drank so much milk across those 4 days. Litres of the stuff. They were just giving out cartons of milk. It was fucking brilliant. So I watched Matty Elliott go on and make, I reckon Matty Elliott made about 190 odd, and then there were a slew of players out between 80 and 100, including John Moss, who made 98, I think batting at number 6, if I recall correctly. My shame that week, I don't know if I've told Stewie this, I will at some stage, was because of course he's coach of Middlesex these days and I deal with him quite a lot, but back then he was the villain. 2 years in a row, controversial decisions at the Gabba. And when he was dismissed, he was walking back towards the southern stand where the dressing rooms were that year, because they didn't have the dressing rooms on the northern side of the ground at their disposal because of the redevelopment. And I walked all the way down the aisle from where I was sitting to give him a spray from the fence as he was walking off about being a cheat and so forth. I reckon that milk might have been complimented by a few beers at the time. And I remember walking past Nick Holland, who was the Hawthorn centre-half forward at the time, and him looking at me like, what the fuck's this bloke up to? What's going on with him? And not unreasonably, that Dutchie would have thought this is an odd thing to see a guy this fired up at a Shield game. But as I say, I was pretty invested in Shield cricket at the time as a fan. Back to John Moss, he kind of came through the Sydney system, didn't have a contract, and came to Victoria maybe 25, 26 years of age. So by the time he, started making an impact, initially in the white ball stuff and then in the 4-day team, he was kind of on numbers, probably quite close to national selection, but they thought of him as a little bit too old. He might have got a chance of playing for Australia had Victoria cleared him. I remember he wanted to go home at one point to Sydney, and the Vic said, no, you're contracted, you're not going back to Sydney. And I suppose that was the era when playing for New South Wales gave you a much better chance of playing for Australia. But he did serve Victoria with distinction over about 7 seasons. He was a fill-in captain occasionally. He was vice-captain for a couple of seasons. He finished with 7 first-class centuries. He made over 4,500 runs, took over 140 wickets at 34, played over 100 one-day games, won a couple of trophies there too. He was an excellent speaker on the game too. On the early days of SEN, he used to do a lot of work on there. Someone I remember fondly as Victoria's all-rounder in a great era to follow the game, Jonathan Moss.
A friend of mine who played first grade in Sydney used John Moss to me as the example of the gulfs between levels from, say from state to international, from first grade to state. He said Jonathan Moss would monster everybody in first grade cricket. He would take a 5 and make 100 in the same game every week, just every week, and then go to state cricket and have a good record, but really had to scrap for his wickets and for his runs. An interesting thing is that he never took a 5-wicket haul in his first-class career. He did quite a lot of 4-wicket hauls, but that's why the reverence number is 435. Because, initially I thought it might be to do with Victoria's famous 455 chase when David Hussey made a double hundred in the 4th innings. John Moss made 76 and put on a big partnership with Hussey, the first big partnership, and they beat the previous Victorian record chase, which was 435. But the more simple reason that 435 is the Revs number is because those were John Moss's best first-class bowling figures, 4 for 35 at the Wacker when he got Damien Martin, Ryan Campbell, Steve McGoffin and Brad Williams. What a quartet, dream dinner party right there. And those were his best figures because he never quite got to the 5-wicket haul.
And of course, because it's the weekly show, there's only one person who's in the running to win the Brick Lane Brewing slab, and that is the Reverend Dylan Nichols. So you have the opportunity to on-send a slab of Brick Lane of your choice, which many people, Jeff, have been engaging with over the last couple of weeks when we had our Glenn Maxwell discount offer. That's now ended, but plenty of opportunities to get involved with Brick Lane through the summer.
What I can tell you is there will be more discount codes coming up. It was not a one-time thing. There will be more in the future, so keep an eye out because lots of people took advantage of some cut price ales. But this slab goes out for free to the Rev. He can send it to whoever he wants who's in Australia. This person has to be in Australia. He can send it to himself. He can send it to someone else. The important thing that Brick Lane want you to know this week is that the One Love Pale Ale won the best pale ale in Australia at the International Beer Awards not that long ago. I mean, that tells you pretty much all you need to know. It's one love, right? It's all about getting together. It's all about community. It's all about the end of lockdown. It's all about going outside and getting in a large pile of up to 15 people from this Friday in Melbourne, or, a week or so after that, it could be a pile of up to 100 people. I think you still have to wear masks in the pile, but get in the pile with a bunch of One Love Pale Ale. That's all I'm saying.
You can get in the hog pile with Andrew Simons and Marnus Labuschagne, as Simo was caught on the hot mic talking about earlier this year. I completely agree. BrickLaneBrewing.com is where you go to learn more about them. Their social media handles are in our show notes. Take a photo of yourself enjoying the end of lockdown in Melbourne or in New South Wales or in any other part of Australia, but specifically those cities where, Jeff, you must be looking forward to getting out this weekend. You've been locked in your apartment for the better part of 4 months, barely leaving. It's not as though you do exercise, so you've barely left the joint. Have you planned your first night on the tiles?
Well, you can't actually really go anywhere because everything's booked because the pubs have a 50-person capacity. Everything's it's outdoors only at this point. But you are allowed to have people over to your house, so you can have a 10-person house party. 10
That's enough.
Plus
I think 10
enough.
people house parties are the perfect number for a house party. I mean, you don't want 3 or 4. People get jiggy with it with 10 people there. People are willing to play a few shots. They're not willing to play a few shots when there are 4 people there.
No.
But 10 people constitutes a sing-along. It constitutes a small dance floor in the living room. You'll have plenty of fun.
Yeah, 10. There are enough people to keep the dance floor going if 3 or 4 people go to get drinks. That's you can maintain critical mass in both kitchen and living room. That's the key part.
BrickLaneBrewing.com, fantastic supporters of the Final World. Well done to the Reverend for winning this week's slab. You can do likewise. Patreon.com/The Final Word. Join up with what we're doing on the Patreon page, and you can be a 2 in 7 chance of being a winner. We pull one out of the hat on the weekend and one out of the hat on our weekly show.